as it relates to, I think, Harvard Business Review anticipates over 1 billion people being impacted by artificial intelligence. Topics like humanity. Yesterday, when Eddie was with us, and we heard Eddie's chief technology reporter sit on the stage with me in fear of losing his job to artificial intelligence. And we touched on the fact that maybe that won't happen because of the human element. So with that, please give Dr. Anna Tavis a round of applause.
All right. Thank you, thank you. Hey, I wanted to make it more interactive, so if you guys want to move a little closer on this table so that we could have a conversation, because I hope that I have, prepared material that will be somewhat provocative to all of you to think about, that we don't, I took liberty and deviated a little bit from the skills conversation into something that is very rarely, I think, not really, it's discussed, it's out there, but it's just overwhelmed. The conversation about what I want to talk about to you today is overwhelmed with the technical conversation, technical discussions around AI that we've heard here as well. So, the title of my conversation with you today is Feeling Machines, and it's about the rise of EmotionAI. And EmotionAI, we all talk about AI, but there are lots of different terminologies that are emerging, trying to sort of indicate what it is exactly about AI that we are talking about. And what my conversation with you today is going to be is around what's very fundamentally human, emotions, and how is AI dealing with these types of issues? What's happening? What are the innovations that are coming in? And that will help us better understand where we're going to be as a society, as humanity, and what we're going to be doing in the workplace. And I just want to give a little promo. This summer, I've been working on a book on digital coaching that involves AI as well, which is something that the previous panel was discussing around therapy and other types of professions that are integrating these technologies into their core core skill set. So let me start with an anecdote. In 2019, just like you are all preparing to start your academic year, John Kelly IV walked into my class in Human Capital Analytics and Technology. And he's an alumnus, very experienced, and kind of a very geeky, innovative person who is both in HR on the one hand and in technology on the other. And so the assignment was come up with an idea, innovative ideas, if you were an entrepreneur, and put it out there in the market and see, if the idea takes off. So John's idea was replace your CEO with a bot. And it's kind of counterintuitive because especially in those days, we were still talking about kind of manual jobs and like really repetitive jobs that were going to be innovated out by these technologies. But John went straight to the top, right? And it was very interesting to see the rationale that he was proposing. We want to automate, why not start with the CEO? Most importantly, John comes with a compensation background. CEOs are most expensive in any company. It's about 100 times, especially in the US, we see these articles talking about the discrepancy, the gaps between what the average worker earns and what a CEO makes. So, we're definitely saving. But then there was a whole range of qualifications or qualities that he felt needed to be improved. And here's a list a little bit. They're big picture people, but they might miss details. They don't often listen. They just don't have the time. We all know bosses who don't listen. And they're busy people who, very difficult to get hold of. So what is he proposing? The numbers are not going to be an issue. The second bullet I loved. Everyone was like paying attention. What about if we program a CEO with a friendliness slider, which means that he will be accessible to everyone, or he or she, they're going to be accessible to everyone and all the time. And we'll be also taking information from everyone because they have the capacity. Social, not chatty, and they're able to adjust their speech to the interlocutor they're engaging with, because they're going to have a way of measuring and sensing where the other person is. Because, by the way, they might very quickly go through personality assessments that might be available online and just make those types of calibrations in how they are addressing different people. And most importantly, don't boss anyone around to get them coffee or any other petty tasks that sometimes we try to do, and will never harass anyone. So that was a list of qualifications. And what was striking, and I want you to think about it, that the numbers actually came first. And the rest of the qualities of the CEO that needed improvement, and that's the human CEO that needed improvement by the robot, are actually all human, right? Those are the qualities we all wish a CEO robot will have. And so, sure enough, just around that time, these types of headlines started to show up. The first company to replace their CEO with a bot was a Hong Kong-based company. And it was interesting to me, again, being very sensitive to biases and things like that, that it was, the robot was created in the female shape and form, right? Tang Yu, the AI robot CEO, the very first one. And then those are the ones, my favorite, obviously. First robot CEO says Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg could lose their jobs to AI. If we pursue, this innovation in that direction, right? If we think, but if you think about it, why not, right? If you think about the amount of information that, the CEO needs to process, et cetera, makes sense. Makes absolutely sense. Everyone agrees? Ready with me? So, by the way, I posted this John's innovative idea on social media, and I got a call from McKinsey. And they were saying, oh, could we talk to you about your ideas around, automating CEOs? Absolutely. John was delighted to share what he thought about this. So is, most of the time when we talk about the future of work, and here's a sample, I'm not going to dwell there, because I'm going to take us in a little bit of a different direction. We talk about skills, we talk about productivity, performance, efficiency, all of those good things that the machines can do. And there's plenty of information about it. But what I wanted to do today is really talk about what is being done in the most human space. And that is, how are we thinking? How are we redesigning? And what is coming up in the space of human emotions, right? And by the way, there is a vast ecosystem of companies and innovators who are working in the space of human emotions. If we think that we're going to be preserving our emotional intelligence, or EQ, right? And that's going to be something that will differentiate us from the machines. We need to think twice, because reverse engineering humans into the AI gets us to the point where we have emotional and emotionally intelligent machines. So let's look at that aspect of the evolution of AI together. All right? So a couple of comments here. The next generation will be, the next decade will be remembered for its transition to artificial empathy. And I don't like the term artificial. As I told you, there's a little bit, unlike artificial intelligence, artificial empathy, artificial feelings, artificial everything just doesn't sound right, right? It's kind of, it sounds fake. It's okay with intelligence. So synthetic emotions, etc. But anyway, the work on that transition is ongoing now. And I think it's very important for us, even when we think about job replacement, to be paying attention to the other side of innovation in AI, and that is this particular space. And a couple of definitions, artificial empathy, AE, or EmotionAI, and a couple other. I will be also using the term effective computing, that when it comes to companies in that space. And it refers to the capabilities of machines, and especially AI systems, to recognize, understand, and simulate human emotions, right? Intelligence, obviously, it's about decision making, language understanding, everything, all the good things that we've heard in this workshop together. But emotional AI, or artificial empathy, adds that emotional dimension to all the capabilities that the machines are bringing to the task. It's almost scary, but I do want to show you some examples of how it works. Effective computing is more like a study and the space development of systems, devices, specifically focused on the hardware and software of how it's actually done. They can recognize, interpret, process, and simulate human effects. And it's more kind of academic description. But I want you to remember these terms and think about how they apply in the most human professions. So can computers really understand our emotions? And the answer is, they're getting there. They are getting there. And some of them are getting even better than humans, especially in the space of speech recognition. So emotion and speech recognition, machines are actually better than humans in identifying emotions from speech. The research has been conducted for quite some time in that space. That's probably the most advanced area of machines recognizing emotions is in speech. And we know that it works in customer service areas where, as an irate customer calls their service provider, and just based on the tone of that person, of how they're saying whatever they are asking them to say, technology can pick up what kind of response needs to be aligned with this particular customer, and even in bringing in a human provider who specializes in working with disgruntled customers, right? So, don't put a rookie on that job. Somebody's very new, just starting the job, lots of turnover in customer service. So speech recognition. The human accuracy is actually about 60%, right? So machines are getting there. Emotions in facial expression recognition. And that's also understandable, yes? Using facial action coding systems, that there's a whole taxonomy of emotions that has been developed. So machines are being trained the same way as they're trained on everything else, on algorithms and coding, etc. To understand these emotions: neutral, joy, sadness, surprise, anger, fear, disgust. And AI, again, is close to 70% recognition of what kind of emotion you're expressing in your face. And by the way, speaking about cross-cultural issues here, or racial differences, etc., we're beginning to fine-tune even to that level of precision, right? The differences in facial expression, universally accepted that they're pretty much shared across culture. Emotion simulation, where machines can, we have to turn those off, yeah. Agents making interactions with machines feel more human-like. So how do we interact with machines and get that human-like experience? And I'll give you some examples of that. And the final one, emotion response, where AI can truly emotionally, or a robot, the technology can respond appropriately. That the wish for the CEO, right? They respond appropriately to the person in front of them. So this is just a list. You know, as a professor, I like building the lists and giving you some sense of. So companies working on this will be not surprising to you. Some of the big players in the AI field, but also definitely a lot of really interesting, agile, innovative companies. So how is EmotionAI, or how will EmotionAI change the workplace? It's already happening. Healthcare, you know, one of the most advanced economies where this is happening is in Japan. As you know, there's aging population in Japan, and they, especially in the space of care, they need to come up with solutions to care for their aging population, etc. So in healthcare in Japan, there's a great deal of automation that's happening at all levels. And I just want to show you some. I've done quite a bit of research on automation in healthcare and the uses of various technologies and devices. And I think the healthcare might be really leading the way. The next one, similar, senior care. Again, multiple experiments conducted in senior residencies and homes with the robots. And a lot of seniors prefer to have a robot as a companion because, you know, there's never an issue. They're always there. They're always there. As you know, the human capacity for this type of care is very limited. We talk about, you know, we experienced it in COVID, where the healthcare professionals were, you know, really stressed out, burnt out, and had a lot of human-like health issues themselves because of the burden and the pressure and the stress of their jobs. Guess what? With the robots being there, especially if they are trained to be responsive to their clients, to their companions, human companions, the result is very positive. Compassionate care. And those robots do not have to come in a humanoid shape and form, right? Those robots, a lot of animals are use, this is a seal, very famous, again, Japanese robot, Paro, based on a seal, baby seal, who is, given to patients, especially patients with dementia and Alzheimer's, really, really serious issues around supporting the growing number of population that suffer from those types of ailments. And as it turns out, the response and the soothing effects of these types of robots, who are again there for them 24/7, without getting tired, without having to go home and feed their kids, etc. They're always there. And even some of the experiments were done, again, during COVID in senior care facilities with these types of robots. Customer care, understandably, very easy. We're already, if you go to airports, if you go to supermarkets, if you go to other types of places, but it's not just that they're there taking somebody's job. They're also a lot friendlier to the customers than most of the humans are, right? Because people get tired. People have their own issues and they bring them to the job. And just imagine somebody who's really trained to respond in an always cheerful way, and they're there for you 100% of the time. How many times were we waiting for the service person to actually get off their phone somewhere and finish their business and actually talk to us, right? So that type of attention you are getting from these machines. Even in childcare, there are examples, quite a few, that, especially for children for whom it's a play, right? Not replacing parents, but substituting and adding to the care that children are having. And so what the researchers have found out is that the responses to robots are mostly positive. Only when there's a malfunction, and that's something to work on, then the actual frustration comes when the service is not available to people, right? So those are examples. Now, education. Robots are becoming tutors. Because again, to somebody, I think it was your point, if you think of all of the repetitive work that has to be done by the faculty, checking tests and grading tests and looking at answering the same question over and over again in the tutoring session. And IBM, by the way, has been running this with Watson. Obviously, Watson had its peak and then kind of didn't meet the expectations that were initially placed. But IBM came up with Watson, Jane Watson, I think it was the IBM's AI tutor, who was grading students at Georgia Tech. And the results, again, the responses from the students were more positive than the human tutors, who brought in a lot of subjectivity in the grading process. So the robots, especially for certain subjects, are coming to education. And really, really interesting is the uses of robots in special education. For example, with autistic children, where there's again, specially designed robots have a very soothing effect. And again, they can be repeating things over and over again multiple times without expressing any frustration and being tired. So that's another area. social robots. If you look at the headlines in that space where I'm looking at how these particular machines are interacting in the space of kind of emotional engagement with their customers, with their companions, there are lots of examples like this one. So, entertainment, I think we had discussions here about entertainment. It's a huge area, video games, etc. But even, as you can see here, the jazz ensemble, synthetically designed music, and that could be performed by these bands. It's all available already now, and absolutely growing field of experimentation. And just a few more examples here. This is MIT Media Lab that is working on effective computing. Pretty much in every field, there's an application. Lots of research in the area of driving and commuting. As you can see, emotion navigation, bringing empathy to the commuting experience. Those of you who drive, not in New York City, we might need a companion to take us on a couple of stops on the subway, right? For different reasons. We can come up with a use case where we need emotional support to get through the subway, but definitely in driving and navigation. Imagine the truck drivers driving, obviously, before they get all automated out. Any human kind of participating in these types of activities. Empathetic behavior training for physicians working with patients who have opioid use disorder. Amazing. I mean, the research on this, when I was doing kind of a deep dive into the area, where are they looking for the specifically emotional intersection between robots and technology? And they're multiple. At the times where, just as the robots, the drones are now, we talk a lot about robots in the warfare. If you think about these areas of human care, where humans get burnt out, there's a shortage, etc., there's an opportunity for specially designed robots who are emotionally trained and intelligent to come in and provide assistance. And this is something that I find absolutely fascinating. This research is just beginning to take place, and there's an opportunity there because we keep talking about how technology is going to come in and change everything and help us, et cetera, et cetera. What I think we often assume that the humans are going to stay the same. The humans are constant, and then the robots are going to just supplement and accelerate and make us more efficient and all of those kinds of things. But what we need to remember is that the human behavior is going to be adjusting, and we are going to come out on the other end very different if we were to live in harmony with those robots. And by the way, this is an example of research where robots are actually positive for the humans. I shared with you the healthcare examples, but this is just teamwork, right? Empathy machine, this is from Scientific American, research done at Yale University. Empathy machine, humans communicate better after robots show their vulnerable side. You can actually train empathy back to some humans who might not have developed that particular skill, those CEOs that we started out with, right? So the researchers here at Yale were saying, while other work has focused on how to more easily integrate robots into teams, we focused instead on how robots might positively shape the way that people react to each other. We actually could be a lot better to each other because we'll be trained by the robots to how to even express the empathetic emotion and behavior, right? So that's the work. So this, again, these are all quotes from the publications and research. For robots to work with people, all of the language that we hear about AI coming in, taking our jobs, et cetera, totally important conversation, it's happening. But what we need to realize that we need to adjust to working with robots, and they need to be trained to work with humans. And those of you who experience ChatGPT, you know that, if you think, have you thanked your ChatGPT at any point? What do? They come back and say, you're welcome, please come back, I'm going to help you again. So this is the kind of emotional response that is being introduced there. And here I am showing you this little anecdote. Those of you who have been in New York City for a little bit, remember this guy. This is the Spot. The dog that was initially, it's a robot, works with the New York Police Department, right? So the police brought him in, and a couple of weeks later, the dog was fired because the police went with this dog on their duty, walk around, etc. And the people of New York City were terrified. The reaction of the audience was terrifying, right? Because who is this dog, et cetera, et cetera. So the dog was fired from the job, even though it was very expensive to get him in the first place. So Mayor Adams actually recruited the dog back. And the point here, this little anecdote, is that there will be that process of emotional adjustment, both on the human side, as well as the technology is going to get better trained to interact in human communities, on human teams, etc. So they are a member of the team and recognized as such. Just like we treat animals now as members of the family. This is just a few generated names because we still don't have a name for it. We talk about it for intelligence, we're all clear. Everyone is on the same page. When it comes to this emotional side of humans that computers are really also getting into, there's not one terminology that defines it all. This is why I kind of gave you a few examples of what it might be. And I want to finish again on the NYU note here. For the incoming class into our program, incoming students, we are going to introduce an AI tutor, AI coach. We are collaborating with this company, Coach M, and all the students coming into our program who are starting out are going to receive an AI coach who is going to be interacting with them through the semester. And we are running a little experiment to see how they are going to come out on the other side. And there will definitely be a control group of students who are not going to get it. I see some of my students here who are later in their studies. So unfortunately, we're just going to get started with it. You'll have to start again. But the point being, we are at NYU, we're beginning to experiment with this and see how will the students do. Because if you think about what your advisors do, how much repetitive, the average advisor works with about 300 students. And that's, and then just think about the volume, right? If everyone came for advice. And just think if some of that could be supported by an AI chatbot who is available 24/7 to you, answers the most basic questions. A lot of it is pretty routine. And so we are going to experiment with this, and I hope to talk to you in December. Liz, when you run that metaverse, maybe we could make a little detour back to AI and see how it comes out and how our students reacting to having an AI support person who will be working with them on meeting their goals. So the hybrid work, I wrote a lot about hybrid work, and and we talk about hybrid means office or home, etc. But I think the real hybrid that we need to be adjusting to and learning to live with and celebrate and have fun with it will be humans plus technology. That's, if we can solve for that equation, I think we're going to be in a really interesting place. And I just want to finish on this one. Why are we doing it? I know it's high level, et cetera. I like high level mission oriented statements. So the point is not to be better than robots. They absolutely are going to be better in so many ways, but also to kind of focus on the work that we love to do most, and that is being creative, caring, and curious. And we kind of need to stick to who we are as humans, and as I told Mark, that maybe, we've been very, very fortunate for the thousands and millions of years of evolution that we were kind of the superior species, the humans. And now we'll just have to share the space with some of the technologies that we ourselves have invented. And that's basically my message. That's it. And I welcome any questions, but maybe what we can do in the spirit of like a workshop, if you want to talk at your tables, because it's good to talk to the speakers here about, you've got your peers sitting at the table. I'm happy to answer questions, but I'll give you 3 minutes to just talk to the people around your table about what you think, how it applies to you. Does it make sense to you? Have you encountered anything along those lines? And just talk to each other and then share with us what you think. Great to see so much engagement. Conversation is going. So why don't we share what you've discussed? And I know that there were some other conversations going on, might have just introductions, et cetera, but the general kind of overall take, share what you've discussed at your tables. Why don't we start over there, guys?
Well, just several points that were interesting to me. So, like you covered senior care. I'm one of 10 children. My mom is 82. She's in Mexico. She at one point had a house full of kids, and now she's home alone. So that senior care bot is something that would be very interesting to me, and I feel my mom would use it and would have a positive impact on her.
Yeah.
Her, her well-being, her mood.
And a lot more affordable, right? With the initial investment, but then it pays off thinking about the care, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it would not impede on her independence and her privacy, because that's one of the reasons why she doesn't want to have anybody, checking up on her, for instance. So I think that's a wonderful idea. I think the emotional intelligence or therapy, that's really fantastic too, because there are a lot of humans who just don't have that emotional intelligence. They're not able to get cues from people's, reactions. And so we can train our robots to then train other humans,
yeah.
right? To have a little bit more empathy toward others.
It's actually an excellent point, because some of the applications of this is with autistic children. And as you know, the right kind of training, the right kind of development for them, with a lot of repetition, et cetera, consistency, and the robots work much better oftentimes than humans. because they have a lot more endurance, let's put it that way. Excellent point. 1 second.
Yeah, I was going to say, not to segue from Eva's point, but also just remote management, especially replaced a lot of managers who, now that a lot of people work from home due to the pandemic, they don't realize that, the way they're coming off or the way they're in the direction is actually alienating people rather than having them collaborate well with others. So that could be another useful tool, especially for the corporate America, to train managers and also employees about the importance of obviously emotional intelligence, but also
Yeah, and the CEOs as well, right? All the managements, yeah, and some faculty members as well. Yeah, yeah.
I want to add on Eva's point that I think humans need to, like we also think that whole idea that AI is not, cannot recognize people's emotion, but I think like they do a better job than us. I remember I did an online test about distinguish people's emotion based on their facial expression, and I did really bad job. And I think AI can help us to better understand
Yeah.
our humans.
And another connection there, one step, is recognizing somebody's emotion doesn't mean that you act on it as a human, right? Like, I don't care. I don't care you're in distress. I mean, we experience it in New York City all the time. We just go straight. We don't pay attention to what kind of... With a robot, it's not an option, right? If you see the emotion, you respond, accordingly. That's a very good point, right? Okay, so we'll go to the other side of the room. Okay, Diane?
So those of you who don't know me, I'm a career coach at Blossom, and I always say to students, all roads lead to the interview. So at some point, you're going to be meeting with someone and hoping to get a job, and all of your talent, education, everything comes to a head. But you only have that person for 30 to 60 minutes to convince them, and it's such a lot of stress. We do mock interviews, and a heartbreak of mine in my career is I've known so many great candidates who just don't interview well. So a robot could be such a great coach. Like, I could do a mock interview for 20 minutes and give some rudimentary feedback, and we also have some tools that are observational tools where you can record yourself and give some feedback. But having like a targeted coach like that would be incredible, and especially for people who are on the spectrum who have challenges meeting those social cues, which would be so important in that situation. I'm also thinking of public speaking, which is something
Yeah.
that people are afraid of. You're awesome at it. All of our guests are. And that's like really a path to career growth. And I think these kinds of coaches can be very encouraging.
Yeah, the coaching and feedback. Excellent. All right, let's go to this table.
So, what I decided is, so the thing I noticed about with AI is, although they're all replacing some jobs, I noticed that it frees up time. So I know with my job and my schedule, it cuts time for prospecting in half. So it affords me the time to do more networking, to meet more people, get more homework done, whatever I have to do. But I just sort of had a question for you regarding
Yes.
AI. So although we have like all of these like integrations, like driving and just everything we do, the couple example you gave with the older people. So what I'm curious about is like with the devices, don't they have to like replace the battery, or like aren't there financial things? I mean, aren't there like financial implications? So like not all schools could afford it, and
Yeah. But when we make an investment, it's an investment, right? It's not just a cost, it's also an investment. And as I mentioned, for example, in senior care, the cost of human care is, people get, this is where the entire savings, their lifetime savings get wiped out just in the last couple of years of senior care, right? Because human care costs a lot, and you don't always get the quality that you want. Doesn't mean that the robots are there. They are a good assistant. There's always a human overseeing it, et cetera. These are early stages. But think about it as an investment and savings in the long run. It may be upfront. Yeah, you need to change the battery, but that person is 24/7, that robot, as opposed to a human that there's no human who can work with seniors for 24/7 or in nursing, etc. Yeah.
I would just like to add to that for example, yeah, so you have to change the battery in a robot, but humans take days off. They take a sick day, they take a personal day off, so it's kind of the same thing. Right?
It's actually 24/7 pretty much, and probably in the longer run. Yeah.
Yeah, but also how about like schools that, I know you said it's an investment, but like not all places can afford the investment.
Yeah, and I think Mark talked about that with the previous conversation, that there's still, has to be access to these technologies, etc. But the whole point is that they're becoming more and more affordable, just like the initial cell phones. I remember the thousands and thousands of dollars on the first ones, and now they're still, depending on the model that you want, but they're pretty much available, right? So it's going to, the upfront costs for developing of these tools, that's why you see the big name companies there, Apple and Microsoft, et cetera, who can make those investments. But there's also a really, really dynamic ecosystem of companies that are developing all of these solutions. And down the road, it's going to save us on the care rather than be more expensive than humans. And we're just running out of humans, right? Like Japan is a good example of that. And it frees up. We talk about the sandwich generation, right? The generation of people, I think it's Generation X, that is taking care of their children and taking care of their parents, and they have no life of their own, right? Because they're just taking care of everyone. So just think if you had an assistance in that, right? Any other thoughts? Thank you very much for your question.
Yeah, so we talked about our deal was kind of in between of how it was also disruptive, but it's also, because we talked about how the jobs that will be lost eventually will disrupt the economy. And I also want to ask a question, like, are we going to compensate the AI workers in some way? Because at some point, aren't they going to, if there will be a AI right, I think that will be because we don't pay them enough or something.
Yeah.
So I was curious about how that compensation in terms of, I'm just thinking, I can only think about money right now, but how would that look like?
It's a really, really great question. I also did some research on that and wrote about it. There's a whole movement that's emerging about giving these technologies rights. Like, if it is a sentient or, humanoid type of robot, maybe you have no right to destroy it or disable it, right? Will they have rights? And oftentimes, this type of movement is compared to animal rights, because animal rights also took quite some time to evolve, and now we have all sorts of laws regulating how humans should be treating animals, and animals have, and so the conversation that's ongoing right now is around, especially these care-focused technologies, will they have protections so that an evil human doesn't come in and destroy them? It's an interesting conversation, and more around ethics, morality, values. And this is where I'm again saying that it's not just going to be a tool, like AI is being compared to, machine age, right? It's a lot more, because we're building that awareness and emotion, and we're beginning to build relationships with these tools, right? So we're going to see, but the conversation around their rights, not just the compensation or rewards that they're going to get, is happening in the ethical space. Yeah, we need to define our connection to these machines. Yeah. So, anything else from this table? Are you all guys okay? All right. Okay. Others? Yeah. Yeah.
We also have concerns.
Yeah, I just want you to speak up a little bit so that
We also have concerns about the use of the emotional AI, because when we talk about emotion, it's something delicate, right?
Yeah.
We have to be very careful, and sometimes in order to solve emotion-related problems, we come up with ideas, And once the ideas are planted in our brain, it's really hard to remove it. We were talking about how do we know, how are we sure that the suggestions that the AI provide to its customers is still in the right boundaries. And we're also talking about how do we avoid of being too dependent to the AI, especially when it's really easy to access, and especially for those who are introverts, who are more comfortable talking to robots than humans. How do we avoid the dependency of the people to AI? Because once we're too dependent, we become too easy to manipulate and stuff like that.
Yeah, lots of really, really good questions. I would also add to this, not just dependency, but the addiction. Because you're always getting validated. How about, unless we program the robot to be a little bit more controversial and give you real-time feedback, but it's easy to, kind of get hooked on that dopamine of being validated all the time. So the questions you are asking are similar to what we are discussing around government regulations, company regulations, the boundaries. It's just at the human level, how we define those boundaries between humans and machines, and it's all evolving. And I'm inviting you to be asking those questions, to be, looking at what's happening and thinking proactively, because it's the space that needs to be defined, and it's happening just in time as these tools are being introduced, and we are putting them out there, not just ChatGPT, but we are putting these robots into senior communities, and we'll look at what is actually happening with the behavior. This is why we're running this experiment at NYU with our students. Lots more research needs to be done, not just on developing new tools, but also understanding what the place of the humans is going to be if we're surrounded, if we have access to all of these technologies. And this conversation has to happen at the ethical level. This conversation has to happen at the a regulatory level. And just one more example, and I didn't bring it in my presentation, but I'm sure a lot of you heard of it, is the company Replica. A Replica that was kind of a dating site for humans and robots to meet. And so the humans could get a very, very, well-designed robot, exactly what kind of who they wanted to, find for themselves. And so what was really interesting was that people started getting addicted, that people started withdrawing from society and spending time with their robots because of the effect that these types of relationships, they're all positive, especially if they had challenges meeting their, significant others in the real world, when you have to deal with a real person with their issues, and they don't smell right, and they do, and you start putting on, and here you got a robot who is perfectly designed, So that company actually had to be partially shut down because of all of those negative kind of addictive type of effects that they realized were happening. So again, really, really interesting space, needs all of your attention. You're students at NYU, you have a lot of influence in your lives and careers, and pay attention to this. And keep defining this space and be proactive about it. Liz, you wanted to say something?
One other question that I'd love you to spend a moment on that hasn't been in the room, which is how is this going to help the underserved? It's one of those issues that when technology rises, it emphasizes the gaps. And this would, you know, when we think about the whole, I just think it's something this room needs to be concerned about.
Yeah, no, I think that whole, again, that's the book where I was working on like democratization of coaching through technology, where you get an AI coach. Like before, it is an example of coaching. It's only the CEO and the senior leadership and that got the coach. Now, because of these technologies, a lot of people are going to have access to it. So it's democratizing to a certain extent. The same thing, for example, with learning disabilities. You know, imagine how many human professionals are there to work in very specific situations with these children, for example, right? Autism is an example of that. If you come from a very well, you know, situated family, you can find the schools, you can find everything, you can find the teachers at all costs. But now to make it available to people who do not have those means, just because technology, and it could be subsidized by the, let's say, Department of Education, right? So that those types of tools are available. So it's gradually happening. Clearly we need to have, what you're asking is also really, really important, that there's got to be an intentional policy and design, even at the level of, you know, like the city government. We know that Eric Adams cares a lot about, you know, what happens with jobs, et cetera, apprenticeships in the city, employing people here, you know, and providing those resources to people who otherwise won't have access to them centrally. That will be the role of, you know, the governments and even local governments. We actually were working, we have to do it on bringing digital coaching to high schools. We were thinking, running a little pilot to see if we could, you know, find some funding from the school. One second. From the schools, New York City schools, to help seniors, you know, and Diana, you will appreciate it. I think there is like one career counselor per 500 students in public high schools in New York. How much attention, how much career counseling are you actually going to get? And imagine that bringing in those digital tools and giving them the support that those kids can have. So we wanted to run a little experiment with that as well. Yes, please.
I just have a quick question. I know you have to but my question is more about a development of humans in terms of exposure emotionally to things, because I know it seems like to me, from my observing this whole lecture, that AI is used to help humans, or not help, but kind of shield humans from the negative experiences in life and help develop through positive experiences. But me being, I'm American Indian, and so through our culture, we are with our children through experiencing negative things, not things that are negative to them, but being able to experience like the array of emotions.
Yeah.
So they will have resistance and capacity in order to evolve as a human, to get through hard situations, like in terms of traveling horseback from Mexico to Canada, and dealing with all these things physically and emotionally. We have to experience all those things, bad, and good. And so I'm looking at it in terms of developing as humans, possibly going to space. Will humans have capacity emotionally to do that through the help of, now AI becoming something that's prominent within society and shielding, young people and people from experiencing all these things. Emotionally, being able to do that. Do you think that we have capacity?
Yeah. I know, absolutely. I think what's important there, it's an excellent question. It's not like the negative experiences are going to be taken away. But I think what you're going to get is the support in an ability to process and reflect, because that's where the growth happens. The growth happens when you experience something and then you reflect on that and you learn. And we know it for a fact. And you know, that's kind of where, you know, again, I spend my summer writing about the coaching, right? The coaching, it doesn't replace, if you get a coach, it doesn't replace the hard work. Think of the athletes. What it does, it helps you understand how you can get better, how you can get stronger, how you can build resilience. And that's where, you know, I think the replica example wasn't really helpful in that respect. Like, that's exactly what shouldn't be done. Like, separate yourself from all the humans and you'll be in, you know, you'll have that ideal state. But I think where, again, the co-pilot idea or coach idea works really well is if you had that experience, you have a tough situation, but instead of going and being by yourself and hoping that you will have the, you know, the capacity to grow from there, especially like if you think about children, what they say, child psychologists are saying, you know, it's not really the negative experiences that the children have, it's about how they can process it, how they can reflect on that, how they can grow beyond that, right? So I think creating the support system where people can be processing, reflecting, building resilience in a deliberate way, and coaching and sports metaphor could be a really good example of how it could be done in both ways. Because if you think of the athletes, you know, all of the, you know, professional sports we're looking at, Olympic sports we're looking at, all of those people are amazing. I'm sure that they're, you know, like genetically better situated to be successful, right? However, where with the coaching, they become absolutely unbeatable, right? So that's kind of, doesn't take away the hard work that goes into doing it. And I absolutely agree with you. I was just talking to Mark about it, saying, you know, so what is going to happen? We got to where we all got, everyone in the room, because we made, you know, we had challenges. We had to make difficult decisions. I don't know if you rode your horse from Mexico to Canada. You did? I knew that you were just showing off a little bit. Yeah. Good. Yeah. No, that's admirable. But you know, and I think the right kinds of humans are going to be seeking those experiences, right? But then at the end, knowing that you have soft landing, you have somebody you can talk to, can take away a lot of negativity, a lot of bad outcomes that we see in society even right now. I mean, how many children in New York City could be supported through these types of systems? Obviously, it's all experimental, but you know, we are dreaming in this workshop here. And I think, you know, I just want to give you some food for thought, and you know, and just get in the game. Yeah.
Just last, and I want to put on that developing as a human, but we are talking about developing robots as a human, and we are talking about teaching them empathy and things. But in last conversation with the previous guest, we discussed about how robots are taking inputs and developing them to become a better robots. So what if humans have all kinds of emotions, not only positive, but sometimes we have negative kinds of emotions too. So what if robots learn on that too? And for example, like few people hide their emotions. What if robots learns all of this with positive and negative? What would be the repercussion, regulation, and all kinds of stuff we were discussing?
Yeah, they can definitely get out there on their own, but the idea right now is that we kind of have a little bit of a control of how we train them, right? Yeah, we're still sort of in charge. We're not there yet that they're running our lives, right? All right, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.